excerpt from the Vajrachedika Prajnaparamita, or Diamond Sutra, a copy specifically found in Gilgit in Pakistan. The Blessed One said, "The number subhuti of particles of dust in a world system of 3,000 great thousand worlds. Is that great?" He said, "It is great, Blessed One. That particle of dust is said to be not a particle by the Tathagata. In that sense, a particle of dust is used. Also, that which is a world system, that is said by the Tathagata not to be a system. In that sense, world system is used." The Blessed One said, "What do you think, Subhuti? Is a Tathagata to be seen through the 32 characteristic marks of a great man?" He said, "No, Blessed One. Why is that? Each of the 32 characteristic marks of a great man is said to be not a characteristic mark by the Tathagata. In that sense, the 32 characteristic marks of a great man is used." The Blessed One said, "But again, Subhuti, if a woman or a man were to give away their person as many times as there are sands in the river Ganges, and if someone else, after taking from this discourse on doctrine a verse of even 4 lines, were to teach it to others, the latter alone would on that account produce great merit, immeasurable and incalculable." Then, indeed, the venerable Subhuti, through the shock of the doctrine, burst into tears. Wiping away his tears, he said this to the Blessed One: "It is astonishing, O Blessed One, it is truly astonishing, O Sugata, how this discourse on doctrine was spoken by the Tathagata, as a consequence of which knowledge has arisen for me. I have never heard this discourse on doctrine before. They, Blessed One, who will produce a true conception when this sutra is being taught here, will be possessed by the greatest astonishment. And that, Blessed One, which is a true conception, that indeed is not a conception. On that account, the Tathagata says, a true conception, a true conception. Blessed One, it is not astonishing to me that I am prepared for the teaching of this discourse on doctrine, since I have been intent upon it. Blessed One, those living beings who will take up this discourse on doctrine and master it will be possessed by the greatest astonishment. But again, Blessed One, a conception of a self will not occur to them, nor a conception of a living being, nor a conception of a personal soul, nor a conception of a person. And why is that? Because the Buddhas, the Blessed Ones, have walked away from all conceptions." The Blessed One said, "That is so, Subhuti. Those who, after hearing this discourse on doctrine, will not be terrified, will not tremble, will not be overcome by dread, they will be possessed by the greatest astonishment. And why is that? This, Subhuti, has been declared by the Tathagata to be the greatest perfection. And that which the Tathagata declares the greatest perfection is declared as well by immeasurable Buddhas and Blessed Ones. In that sense, greatest perfection is used." But again, Subhuti, that which is the perfection of patience of the Tathagata, just that is not a perfection. And why is that? When, Subhuti, an evil king hacked the flesh from all my limbs, there was for me on that occasion no conception of a self, no conception of a living being, no conception of a personal soul, no conception of a person. Nor, moreover, could there have been a conception of injury for me at that time. Subhuti, I remember 500 births in the past when I was a seer who taught patience. Then, too, there was for me no conception of a self, no conception of a living being, no conception of a personal soul, no conception of a person. Therefore, Subhuti, a bodhisattva, a mahasattva, having abandoned all conception, missing folio. Those who will take up this discourse on doctrine will preserve it, will declare it, will recite it, will master it. All those living beings will carry my awakening on their shoulder. And why is that? It is not possible for this discourse on doctrine to be heard by living beings who have but little resolve, nor is it possible for it to be heard, taken up, or mastered by those who have a view of a self, nor by those who have a view of a living being or a personal soul or a person. That situation simply does not occur. But again, Subhuti, on whatever piece of ground one will proclaim this sutra, that piece of ground will become an object of worship. That piece of ground will become for the world, together with its devas, men, and asuras, a true shrine to be revered and circumambulated. Subhuti, those sons and daughters of good family who will take up sutras such as these and master them, they will be ridiculed, severely ridiculed. But through that ridicule, their demeritorious actions in former lives, which should lead to rebirth in an unfortunate destiny, will here and now come to be exhausted, and they will obtain the awakening of a Buddha. Subhuti, I remember that in the past, during incalculable and more than incalculable eons, before the time of the Tathagata, Arhat, fully and completely awakened one Dipamkara, there were 84 hundreds of thousands of millions of billions of Buddhas, who were attended to by me, and having been attended to, were not neglected. If, Subhuti, after having attended to them, all those Buddhas were not neglected by me, and if in the final period, when the last 500 years have begun, someone will take up these sutras and master them, then, Subhuti, the quantity of merit resulting from the former does not approach even 100th part of the quantity of merit of the latter, nor 1,000th part, nor 100,000th. The quantity of merit is not open to enumeration, nor measure, nor calculation, nor comparison, nor likening. Subhuti, those living beings, those sons and daughters of good family, will acquire then such a quantity of merit that if I were to declare the quantity of merit of those sons and daughters of good family, living beings who heard that declaration would go mad. They would be totally disoriented. But again, Subhuti, this discourse on doctrine is unthinkable. Unthinkable indeed is its effect. He said, How, Blessed One, should one who is set out on the way of a bodhisattva stand? How should he actually practice? How should he direct his thought? The Blessed One said, Here, Subhuti, one who has set out on the way of a bodhisattva should produce a thought in this manner. All living beings should be led by me to final nirvana, in the realm of nirvana which leaves nothing behind. But after having led living beings thus to final nirvana, there is no living being whatsoever who has been led to final nirvana. And why is that? If, Subhuti, a conception of a living being were to occur to a bodhisattva, a conception of a personal soul, or a conception of a person, he is not to be called a bodhisattva. And why is that? Subhuti, that which is called one who is set out on the way of a bodhisattva, that is not a thing. What do you think, Subhuti? Is that something which was awakened to by the Tathagata in the presence of the Tathagata Dipamkara as the utmost full and perfect awakening? He said, Blessed One, that which was awakened to by the Tathagata in the presence of the Tathagata Dipamkara as the utmost full and perfect awakening is not something. He said, Because of that, I was assured by the Tathagata Dipamkara, you, young man, will be at a future time a Tathagata, Arhat, fully and perfectly awakened, one named Shakyamuni. And why is that? Tathagata, Subhuti, that is a designation for thusness. Subhuti, someone might speak thus, the utmost full and perfect awakening is fully and perfectly awakened to by the Tathagata. But that which is the utmost full and perfect awakening, fully and perfectly awakened to by the Tathagata, is not something. Subhuti, the thing which is fully and perfectly awakened to by the Tathagata, in that there is neither truth nor falsehood. On that account, the Tathagata says, all characteristics are the characteristics of a Buddha. All characteristics, Subhuti, all those are not characteristics. In that sense, all characteristics is used. Suppose, for example, Subhuti, there would be a man endowed with a body, a great body. Subhuti said, that which the Tathagata has called a man endowed with a body, a great body, he, Blessed One, is said to be endowed without a body by the Tathagata. In that sense, endowed with a body, a great body, is used. The Blessed One said, Just so, Subhuti, the Bodhisattva who would speak thus, I will lead beings to final nirvana. He is not to be called a Bodhisattva. And why is that? Is there, Subhuti, something which is named Bodhisattva? He said, No indeed, Blessed One. The Blessed One said, On that account the Tathagata says, all things are without living being, without personal soul, without person. Subhuti, a Bodhisattva who would speak thus, I will bring about wonderful arrangements in my sphere of activity. He too is not to be called a bodhisattva. And why is that? Wonderful arrangements in one's sphere of activity. Wonderful arrangements in one's sphere of activity. Subhuti, those who have been said by the Tathagata not to be wonderful arrangements. In that sense, wonderful arrangements in one's sphere of activity is used. Subhuti, that bodhisattva who is intent on saying, without a self are things, without a self are things, he is declared a bodhisattva, by the Tathagata, Arhat, fully and perfectly awakened one. What do you think, Subhuti? Does the physical eye of the Tathagata exist? He said, So it is, Blessed One, the physical eye of the Tathagata exists. The Blessed One said, What do you think, Subhuti? Does the divine eye of the Tathagata exist, the eye of wisdom, the eye of Dharma, the awakened eye? He said, So it is, Blessed One, the divine eye of the Tathagata exists, the eye of wisdom, the eye of Dharma, the awakened eye exists. The Blessed One said, What do you think, Subhuti? There could be as many Ganges rivers as there are sands in the river Ganges, and there could be as many world systems as there are sands in that many rivers. Would those world systems then be many? The Blessed One said, Subhuti, I could know the various streams of thought of living beings as numerous as those in that many world systems. And why is that? Stream of thought, Subhuti. That has been said by the Tathagata to not be a stream. In that sense, stream of thought is used. And why is that? Subhuti, a past thought is not apprehended. A future thought is not apprehended. A present thought is not apprehended. What do you think, Subhuti? He who, after having filled this 3,000 great thousand world system with the 7 precious things, would give it as a gift, surely that son of daughter of good family would, as a result, produce much merit. He said, Much, Blessed One, much, Sugata. The Blessed One said, So it is, Subhuti, so it is much. That son or daughter of good family would, as a result, produce much merit. If, Subhuti, there would have been a quantity of merit, the Tathagata would not have said quantity of merit. What do you think, Subhuti? Should the Tathagata be seen through the perfect development of his physical body? He said, No, Blessed One. It is not through the perfect development of his physical body that the Tathagata is to be seen. And why is that? A perfect development of the physical body, that is said to be not a perfect development by the Tathagata. In that sense, perfect development of the physical body is used. The Blessed One said, What do you think, Subhuti? Should the Tathagata be seen through the possession of characteristic marks? He said, No, Blessed One. It is not through the possession of characteristic marks that the Tathagata is to be seen. And why is that? That which is the possession of characteristic marks is said to be not the possession of characteristic marks by the Tathagata. In that sense, possession of characteristic marks is used. The Blessed One said, What do you think, Subhuti? Surely it occurs to the Tathagata. Not by me who has a doctrine been taught. He, Subhuti, who would speak thus, by the Tathagata a doctrine has been taught. He, Subhuti, would falsely accuse me by taking something up from what is not there. Why is that? A teaching of doctrine. Subhuti, that is not something which receives the name a teaching of doctrine. He said, Blessed One, will there be any living beings at a future time who, after hearing such doctrines being taught, will believe? The Blessed One said, They, Subhuti, are neither living beings nor non-living beings. Why is that? All living beings, Subhuti, they are said to be not living beings by the Tathagata. In that sense, all living beings is used. What do you think, Subhuti? Surely that which was awakened to by the Tathagata as the utmost full and perfect awakening is something? He said, Blessed One, that which was awakened to by the Tathagata as the utmost full and perfect awakening is not something. The Blessed One said, So it is, Subhuti, so it is. Not even the most minute thing exists or is found there. In that sense, utmost full and perfect awakening is used. But again, Subhuti, that thing is the same. There is no difference. In that sense, utmost full and perfect awakening is used. Through the fact of there being no personal soul, no living being, no person, that utmost full and perfect awakening is fully and perfectly awakened to as identical with all meritorious things. Meritorious things, Subhuti, but just those are said by the Tathagata not to be things. In that sense, meritorious things is used. But once again, Subhuti, if someone, after collecting piles of the 7 precious things as large as the kings of mountains, the Sumerus, here in this 3,000 great thousand world system, were to give them as a gift, and someone else, after having taken from this perfection of wisdom a verse of even 4 lines, were to teach it to others, Subhuti, the quantity of merit of the former case does not approach 100th part of the quantity of merit of the latter. It is not open to comparison. What do you think, Subhuti? Surely it occurs to the Tathagata, living beings are released by me. Not again, Subhuti, is it to be seen thus. Why is that? That which is released by the Tathagata is not some living being. If again, Subhuti, there would have been some living being who was released by the Tathagata, that indeed would have been for him the holding on to a self, the holding on to a living being, who, for him, the holding on to a personal soul, the holding on to a personal entity, holding on to a self, Subhuti. This is said by the Tathagata to be not holding on, but it is held on to by simple ordinary people. Simple ordinary people, Subhuti. These are said by the Tathagata not to be people. In that sense, simple ordinary people is used. What do you think, Subhuti? Should the Tathagata be seen through the possession of a characteristic marks? He said, that is so, Blessed One. The Tathagata is to be seen through the possession of characteristic marks. The Blessed One said, but if, Subhuti, the Tathagata were to be seen through the possession of characteristic marks, a Chakravartin, or wheel-turning king, would also be a Tathagata. He said, as I understand the meaning of what was said by the Blessed One, the Tathagata is not to be seen through the possession of characteristic marks. Then again, on that occasion, the Blessed One spoke these verses. Those who saw me through form, those who associated me with sound, they have engaged in a misguided effort. Those people will not see me. The awakened one is to be seen from the doctrine. The Tathagata is the body of doctrine. But indeed, the substance of the doctrine is not to be understood, nor is it possible for it to be understood. What do you think, Subhuti? Is the utmost full and perfect awakening fully and perfectly awakened to by the Tathagata through the possession of characteristic marks? Again, Subhuti, it is not to be seen thus. The utmost full and perfect awakening, Subhuti, is not fully or imperfectly awakened to by the Tathagata through the possession of characteristic marks. If again, Subhuti, it should occur thus. By someone set out on the way of a bodhisattva, the destruction of something is taught, or its annihilation. Again, Subhuti, it is not to be seen thus. The destruction of something, or its annihilation, is not taught by someone who is set out on the way of a bodhisattva. If again, Subhuti, a son or daughter of good family, after filling world systems similar in number to the sands of the Ganges with the 7 precious things, were to give them as a gift to the Tathagata, Arhat, fully and perfectly awakened one, and if a bodhisattva were to achieve composure in the midst of things that have no self, the latter would indeed produce much greater merit than the former. However, Subhuti, a quantity of merit is not to be acquired by a bodhisattva. He said, a quantity of merit, Blessed One, is to be acquired, surely? The Blessed One said, it is to be acquired, Subhuti, not is to be held onto. In that sense, is to be acquired is used. But once again, Subhuti, if someone were to speak thus, the Tathagata goes, or he comes, or he stands, or he sits, or he lies down, he does not understand the meaning of what I said. Why is that? A Tathagata, Subhuti, has not come from anywhere, has not gone anywhere. In that sense, Tathagata, Arhat, fully and perfectly awakened one, is used. And if again, Subhuti, a son or daughter of good family were to grind into powder as many world systems as there are particles of dust in this 3,000 great thousand world system, so that there would be just a pile of the finest atoms, what do you think, Subhuti? Would that pile of atoms be huge? He said, that is so, Blessed One. That would be a huge pile of atoms. And why is that? If, Blessed One, there would have been a pile, the Blessed One would not have said a pile of atoms. Why is that? That which is said to be a pile of atoms, that is said by the Blessed One not to be a pile. In that sense, a pile of atoms is used. That which the Tathagata calls 3,000 great thousand world system, that is said by the Tathagata not to be a system. In that sense, 3,000 great thousand world system is used. Why is that? If, Blessed One, there would have been a system, just that, Blessed One, would have been the holding on to a solid mass. And that which is said by the Tathagata to be the holding on to a solid mass is said to be not holding on. In that sense, holding on to a solid mass is used. The Blessed One said, and holding on to a solid mass is itself, Subhuti, a thing not open to verbal expression. It cannot be put into words. It, however, has been held on to by simply ordinary people. Why is that? If, Subhuti, someone were to speak thus, a view of a self was taught by the Tathagata, a view of a living being, a view of a personal soul, a view of a person, would he indeed, Subhuti, speak correctly? He said, no, Blessed One. And why is that? Blessed One, that which is said by the Tathagata to be a view of self, that is said by the Tathagata to be not a view. In that sense, a view of self is used. The Blessed One said, in this way, Subhuti, one who is set out on the way of a bodhisattva should know all things, should be intent on them, and he should be intent on them in such a way that even the conception of a thing would not be present. Why is that? Conception of a thing, Subhuti, that is said by the Tathagata not to be a conception. In that sense, conception of a thing is used. And again, Subhuti, if a bodhisattva, Mahasattva, having filled immeasurable, incalculable world systems with the 7 precious things, were to give them as a gift, and if a son or daughter of good family, having taken up from this perfection of wisdom a verse of even 4 lines, were to preserve it, were to teach it, were to master it, the latter certainly would produce immeasurable, incalculable merit much greater than the first. And how would he fully cause it to appear? In such a way that he would not cause it to appear. In that sense, fully cause it to appear is used. A shooting star, a fault of vision, a lamp, an illusion and dew and a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a thundercloud. In this way the condition is to be seen. The Blessed One said this. Delighted, the elder Subhuti, and the monks and nuns, the laymen and women, and the world with its devas, men, asuras, and gandharvas, rejoiced in that spoken by the Blessed One. The Vajra Chedika Prajnaparamita is concluded.